the notorious Philadelphia experiment. We delve into one of the most infamous secret military experiments ever conducted, an alleged World War II attempt to render a naval vessel invisible to the naked eye. However, the aftermath of this test revealed horrifying consequences, leaving many crew members in states of unimaginable madness, catatonia, and in some cases, fates even worse. Join us as we uncover the chilling mystery of the Philadelphia experiment. On the evening of October 28, 1943, Carl Allen and his fellow crew members stood on the deck of their ship, the SS Andrew Firth, observing a newly commissioned cannon-class destroyer escort, the USS Eldridge, anchored nearly 100 meters away. Just minutes earlier, the Eldridge had been bustling with activity, but upon receiving orders, her crew had moved below deck, leaving the vessel eerily silent. As she sat motionless amidst a fleet of other ships, she seemed almost abandoned. The men on the Andrew Firth whispered amongst themselves about what was about to unfold, though none could be certain. Their murmurs soon faded as a strange, low hum began emanating from the Eldridge. At first, it appeared as though she was smoking, but upon closer inspection, they realized that a thick, greenish haze, seemingly without any discernible source, was enveloping the entire ship. This fog expanded rapidly, stretching well beyond her superstructure, hovering just a meter from the deck of the Andrew Firth. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupted. When the glare subsided, the crew aboard the Andrew Firth were astonished to find that while the eerie green haze remained, the Eldridge itself had completely vanished. A hushed murmur of disbelief spread through the group. Allen, driven by curiosity, leaned over the rail and reached out toward the haze, only to find his hand repelled by an unseen force. After several minutes, another brilliant flash illuminated the night. As it faded, the Eldridge had inexplicably reappeared in its original position. Almost immediately, orders were barked out for the men aboard the Andrew Firth to vacate and head ashore. As Allen prepared to leave, he noticed teams of scientists, technicians, and Navy officials boarding small launches, making their way toward the Eldridge. There was something unsettling about the ship now, an unnatural stillness, an almost spectral presence. And as later events would confirm, their worst fears were not unfounded. 43 years later, Carl Allen, now living under the name Carlos Allende, remained haunted by what he had witnessed that night at the Philadelphia Naval Yards. Living in near poverty, reclusive, and estranged from his family, he found himself trapped by the memory of that fateful experiment, one that had forever altered the lives of those who had been on board the Eldridge that night. The harrowing aftermath of the Philadelphia experiment. In the years following the incident, those who encountered Carl Allen would never have suspected the horrors he had witnessed. At 61, he exuded warmth and trustworthiness. However, his health was deteriorating, with frequent hospital admissions leading him to accept his impending demise. This realization prompted him to contact investigative reporter Jim Frazier, who agreed to meet at Allen's home in Greeley, Colorado. During their interview on August 14, 1986, Allen stunned Frazier with complex scientific revelations. He explained how hidden elements within the U.S. military had seemingly rewritten the accepted laws of physics, causing a solid steel warship to disappear completely from sight and, in the process, inadvertently teleport several hundred miles away. Allen recounted that while the experiment might have been deemed a success, it resulted in tragic consequences for the crew of the USS Eldridge. As technicians and military personnel ventured deeper into the bowels of the USS Eldridge, it felt as though they were descending into hell itself. The experiment had knocked out all power on the vessel, forcing them to investigate by flashlight. They first encountered crew members who were unconscious and unresponsive, regardless of the methods applied. Others appeared frozen in place, maintaining the positions they held during the experiment. Those who were responsive either cried out in pain or mumbled incoherently, their words jumbled and nonsensical. As the team descended further into the ship's lower decks, the horrifying reality became clear. Not all crew members had survived. One sailor was found staring in shock at his right arm, which had somehow fused with the bulkhead he had presumably stumbled against during the experiment. Technicians were horrified to see that the cold, hard steel had integrated with the flesh and bone of his limb. Another crew member was discovered with the lower half of his body missing, having sunken into and become fused with the metal flooring. The shock of what had occurred was etched upon the poor soul's agonized features, frozen in time at the moment of death. Deeper into the warship's interior, the group found 3 more sailors who had been swallowed up or integrated into the ship's hull at various points, none of whom could be revived or saved. Even more horrific were the bloodied remains of several men who appeared to have been turned inside out, with sections of their uniforms and dog tags just visible from within. These accounts, though lacking credible evidence and widely considered fabrications, have contributed to the enduring legend of the Philadelphia experiment. The U.S. Navy has repeatedly stated that no such experiment was ever conducted, and the details of the story contradict well-established facts about the USS Eldridge. The physics the experiment is claimed to be based on are non-existent. The gruesome aftermath of the Philadelphia experiment. As time passed, the USS Eldridge's compartments echoed with anguished cries as the crew regained consciousness. Survivors were closely monitored and sworn to secrecy, but many suffered lasting anomalous effects. Some experienced sudden bouts of madness, acting with uncontrollable rage before abruptly returning to normal. Others faced complete mental breakdowns from which they never recovered. A particularly disturbing phenomenon, termed deep freezes by Allen, involved individuals becoming immobilized, frozen in their current actions like statues. In some cases, these crew members faded from existence, never to reappear. One disoriented sailor reportedly walked through a solid brick wall and vanished forever. In another incident, 2 sailors engaged in a bar fight suddenly disappeared amidst the chaos. There were also rumors of a crew member in a deep freeze, inexplicably bursting into flames, with his remains burning uncontrollably for 18 days despite efforts to extinguish the fire. When questioned by Jim Frazier about these terrifying incidents, Allen suggested that the torment experienced by the men was not psychological, but a physical side effect of the electromagnetic fields they had been exposed to, which had temporarily knocked them out of sync with the rest of the world. In most cases, a simple touch from a friend or family member would anchor the suffering person to reality and prevent them from fading away. But for some, this simple alleviation was not always successful. While Allen couldn't fully explain the principles behind what became known as the Philadelphia experiment, he provided insight into its intentions. The scientists involved were experimenting with the unified field theory, aiming to connect electromagnetism and gravity. They theorized that generating significant amounts of electricity could amplify these forces, potentially rendering objects within the affected zone invisible to various forms of detection. Given Allen's observations and those present during the alleged experiment, this seemed to have been successfully achieved, as the USS Eldridge did disappear. The alleged teleportation and subsequent investigations. In the days and weeks following the experiment, interviews with the crew of the USS Eldridge revealed unexpected claims. After recovering from the ordeal, several crew members reported that the ship had not only become invisible, but had also been teleported to another location. They believed they had recognized features of the naval base, at Norfolk, Virginia, nearly 300 miles south of Philadelphia, during this displacement. Discreet inquiries at Norfolk yielded accounts from witnesses who claimed to have briefly seen the USS Eldridge there on the day in question. This suggested that the electromagnetic forces used to cloak the vessel might have been more powerful than anticipated, potentially causing instantaneous long-distance teleportation and ostensibly defying known laws of physics. However, investigations into these claims face significant challenges due to inconsistencies with official records. Naval archives indicate that the USS Eldridge was commissioned in August 1943 and spent its initial service months operating out of New York City. Surviving crew members have consistently reported that the Eldridge never docked in Philadelphia during 1943 and was on a shakedown cruise in the Bahamas throughout October of that year. Similarly, logs from the SS Andrew Furuseth show that the ship was traveling between New York and Oran as part of Convoy U-22 on the alleged date of the experiment, placing it far from Philadelphia. Regarding Carl Allen, investigations confirmed his service aboard the SS Andrew Furuseth during that period. He also served on several other naval vessels before retiring at the end of the war. However, interviews with his family and acquaintances depict him as a fantasist prone to exaggeration. Over multiple interviews, Allen altered or embellished aspects of his account. At one point, when challenged by a journalist, he reportedly admitted to fabricating the story, only to retract this admission in a subsequent interview. Facing increasing skepticism and criticism, Allen withdrew from public life, living reclusively until his death in March 1994. Despite the dubious reliability of Allen's testimony, it is documented that the U.S. Navy conducted experiments during World War II, aimed at protecting ships from magnetic mines and torpedoes. These degaussing techniques involved reducing a ship's magnetic signature to render it less detectable to enemy sensors. However, these procedures did not involve rendering ships invisible to the naked eye or teleporting them, as described in the Philadelphia experiment narrative. Degaussing and the Philadelphia experiment. During World War II, Allied navies implemented degaussing techniques to protect vessels from magnetic mines and torpedoes. This process involved running electrical cables around the ship's perimeter to generate a low-level electromagnetic field, effectively reducing the ship's magnetic signature. An example of this technology can be seen aboard HMS Belfast, a World War II museum ship moored on the River Thames in central London. Similarly, the USS Haman, DE-131, an Edsall-class destroyer escort, underwent degaussing calibration near Norfolk in early January 1942. Despite the U.S. Navy's official stance that no such experiment occurred, the legend of the Philadelphia experiment persists. Some theories suggest that the Navy may have conducted classified tests involving electromagnetic fields, potentially leading to unintended consequences for the crew. However, these claims remain unsubstantiated and are widely regarded as a combination of misinterpretations, exaggerations, and fabrications. The story has permeated popular culture, inspiring books, films, and documentaries that explore themes of government secrecy and experimental technologies. While the narrative captivates the imagination, it is essential to distinguish between documented historical events and speculative fiction.